Now from the fountainhead into the period afterwards, into Atlas Shrugged and the moral basis of individualism, which represents the transition between the two. What we have in Atlas for the first time is a complete moral theory and a validation of it. And that's in particular important because we don't have any attempt to validate or prove egoism in the fountainhead. You just show an egoist versus an altruist, a selfish man versus a selfless man, and a lot of facts germane to proving it come out in the story and attention is called to them, but there's no kind of systematic attempt to present it as there is in Galt's speech. And you'll notice that the theme of Atlas Shrugged includes as part of the theme demonstrating a new moral philosophy, which is not something included in the theme of any earlier novel. Okay, so we have a complete moral theory and a validation of it. How does this work and what's new? Well, we see her first trying to present and validate a moral theory in the moral basis of individualism. And we see a certain progression. She has from the beginning the idea that man's life is the standard of value, that we need to have a code of ethics which is going to be egoistic and based on our survival requirements. And on the requirements of living in particular, though, as the sort of creatures we are, of living a man's life. And the idea that the processes of independent judgment and creative work, which were themes in the central ethical content of the Fountainhead, are going to be central to this. Early on in her notes, or midway in her notes, for the moral basis of individualism, we see a moment that Dave Harriman in his editorial notes on the journals calls attention to, and Leonard Peikoff in his introduction commented on, where she thinks about what the right order to present these ideas in. And she crosses out what she had written previously and says, you know, the way to go is to say why we need a code of values and build from there. And this, I think, is the important new idea in this work. Her views at first are that values are needed, a code of values are needed, because of two things, life and free will. Throughout, she has been analogizing the process of valuing to life and seeing it as a case of life. Life is something that's directed, it seeks an end, it's integrated around a function or a purpose. Think of Rourke comparing his buildings to living things. There's one central idea. Living things also act to sustain themselves, and as of the Fountainhead, we have the idea that it's the function of the creator's soul, the moral soul, to create the things that we need to survive. Everything we have, from the wheel to the skyscraper, the highest religious abstraction, is a function of our reasoning mind. So our life depends on our reasoning, and in particular our rational direction of our life, our valuing, our value seeking. You have the idea that life is the standard, values are needed because of the requirements of life, will die otherwise, and freedom. Why freedom? Because other living things act automatically, therefore they don't need values, or anyway, they don't need a code of values. At the time, she would say they don't need values, and we'll see why that would be. But since we have to consciously direct our lives, we need to identify things as goals to seek, set them for ourselves as goals to seek, want them, and go after them. Otherwise, we won't survive. There won't be any structure to our lives. We'll just kind of waste away and die. Okay, so these are the new ideas that are